Our next session is focused on using incrementality and experimentation to grow profit in a cookieless world. And this session will be featuring Jones Road Beauty as well as Haus. And I'd like to welcome to the stage Zach Epstein, the founder and CEO of Haus, to kick off the session.
Hi, my name is Zach. I'm the founder and CEO of Haus. And there we go. For a bit of background on me, and I can share I think why I founded the company and kind of where I'm coming from was, before founding Haus, I was at Google for 7 years. I was a data scientist leading the advanced attribution and experimentation team there. So if you think like Netflix, Booking.com, eBay, a lot of the types of companies who just have teams of causal economists sitting around trying to figure out what to do. And I'll say generally have a tremendous distrust of what's going on the Google side of why should they believe in the measurement when they're giving them money, and how could these systems potentially be working. So I'd worked with them for quite a while on setting up this infrastructure. And then more recently, I was a product manager specifically in cookieless ad targeting and privacy-safe ad targeting of how can Google continue to target users in a world where you don't have IDFAs or third-party cookies. And as we were digging deeper into these problems, the thing I just kept coming back to is measurement is going to be really, really messy. And in a world where you don't have resolvable user identifiers, how do you understand what is incrementing the business? And how do you understand how you're able to really drive additional profit when you're not sure how to parse out correlation versus causation and duplicate events that take place across different networks? So really, it's like these changes are, these changes are really impacting how the digital marketing ecosystem will work, where we went from a world where everything was really transparent. You had a really good understanding of what worked and what didn't. How do you have a resolvable user identifier that works pretty much everywhere, to a new model where we're moving into this ecosystem where you're not exactly sure what's taking place where and how to kind of resolve these identities through other tools, like something that we might be doing at Haus, or through kind of other advanced analytics tactics. So really, if you think about it from a high level, a lot of the data that was powering this several $100 billion ecosystem is kind of being removed from the system, and there were really traumatic impacts that we had seen, and I think it created a really great opportunity to ask for, I think, all companies, and I'm sure it's like a very top of mind question that everybody has, is how do you make more use of your first party data? Like, what can we do? How do we do it? What are the clever things that we can use in our own data warehouse to make sure that we're extracting the value from our customers, whether it's in like the promotion side or in loyalty programs or in advertising, to understand like additional validation layers so that you're not restrained to what a platform reporting gives you, or you have cross-network effects and Google says there's 100 conversions and Facebook says there's 100, and you look into your data warehouse and you don't see 200 conversions and you're not exactly sure how to make this gap. So these are some of the problems that we're definitely working on. And if you think about kind of the direction of marketing and from like a measurement standpoint, there's really 3 pillars that I think are becoming more and more common. There is a platform reporting pillar, maybe call it platform reporting or multi-touch attribution, which is some modeled understanding of like, hey, these are the UTM parameters that we're able to track. We have some understanding of like people are seeing impressions and they're actually converting, but you don't have any cross-network deduplication of it. There's media mix modeling, which is becoming a lot more common, and I think companies are starting to say like, hey, how do we have a better understanding of where our business is going, forecasting the company, and looking from like a more logistic regression understanding of what is driving our business, how do I scenario plan? The challenge there is it's very slow. It takes a long time, it takes potentially months to aggregate this amount of data, or even sometimes like 6, 12 months and you're not exactly sure what's going to happen. Or if you're in a high growth business, it can be really hard to parse out the understanding of what's the organic activity in your marketing versus what is media actually driving. Which then leads to the 3rd pillar, and this is where I think a company like Haus comes in, is how do we run controlled experiments, primarily working off of geo for geo-segmentable media, but then we also have causal impact studies for things in the world of influencer marketing or affiliate marketing to understand how do we create a really precise counterfactual so that you can create 2 worlds where one is a world where your ad exists and one is a world where your ad doesn't exist, and make that as seamless and instantaneous where you can have an experiment live in about 10 minutes. So something that can be really, really easy to implement for your company. What this looks like as a platform, and like this is some of the general understanding that we have at Haus is we're able to give people an understanding of incrementality, what channels are working, what channels aren't working, all rooted as like a transformation of like a Snowflake instance or GCP or Shopify or wherever the data is stored. But then also an understanding from like a diminishing marginal return standpoint of what happens if you spend more? What happens if you spend less? And this is going to be something I'm really excited to talk with our guest Cody about, of how we've been able to see, running these types of incrementality experiments and what it's meant for their business. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Cody Plofker, the CMO of Jones Road Beauty. We can just chat about. Awesome. Thank you for joining me.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Do you want to maybe give a little bit of your background and how you became CMO of Jones Road and what you're focused on?
Yeah, of course. So I'm CMO of Jones Road Beauty. We are a small, bootstrap, family-owned, direct-to-consumer beauty company founded by Bobby Brown, who's my mom. So after leaving her previous company, Jones Road was started, and we decided to launch it just direct-to-consumer. And not wanting to go into retail, not wanting to raise money, and wanted to kind of go slower. And we're about 2.5 years old, growing really quickly. Previous year, I think last year we tripled what we did previous year. This year we'll double. So we're growing really quickly, increasing spend, and super excited about where we're going.
Awesome. So how did you get interested in incrementality to begin with? Like, where did, I think everybody has your unique story of how you got there. Like, what made this realize, hey, this is something we should be thinking more about?
As we've grown, we've definitely, tried to test and branch out into new channels, realizing that we can't just continue to scale on 1 or 2 paid channels. So obviously it was, Meta primarily has been 70-80% of our spend. And I think we knew that we needed to find other places where we can spend and get a better marginal return. And I think the problem with spending on some of these other channels from like a direct response perspective is they're harder to measure. So we found that with TikTok, we had different kind of methods where we tried to, and we turned to YouTube probably about a year ago. And we were relying mostly on attribution, multi-touch attribution, and platform attribution, kind of triangulating some stuff with post-purchase surveys, looking at blended ROAS, but we thought it was working, but it was hard to know because YouTube, it's majority is view-based, so it's kind of hard to know if it's good spend or not. Like our in-platform ROAS or CPA would be way worse than we might get on Meta, where it's primary click, or obviously if you look at like a Google brand search. So I think we tried to do a little bit of incrementality stuff ourselves. We're a very lean team, very small, so we don't even have a data warehouse yet, way smaller than all the brands here. And so we tried doing some stuff and setting it up ourselves, but we didn't really know how to properly power it, the sizes, the spends we needed. So I don't think we had a lot of confidence in the data. So when I saw Haus and it was kind of pitched as a way to do it for you, and it gave me a lot of confidence that the tests that we had set up, the numbers we'd actually get would be helpful. I was all for it.
Yeah, I think this is a really common thing that we hear is like, I think when folks think about the world of testing and experimentation, you just ask like, oh yeah, of course we do some testing and experimentation. And it's like, well, there's this caveat here and there's that caveat there, and like the way that we were thinking about things. I think this is one of the things that I was really focused on when I found the company is how do we make someone like yourself have the confidence to be able to do this without me having to say, hey, like I think the best thing for you to do is hire 3 economists. Like that's a pretty impractical ask for I think most companies.
Yeah, definitely for us, we're not there yet.
Not yet, one day. But so within that prism, like we could maybe speak a little bit about the testing that we've done together. But like, what have you found in the tests that you've done with Haus? And then I guess, what are the things that you're really eager to test? Or like, what are the big questions that you're thinking about trying to answer more prescriptively?
There's a lot I want to test. There's like so many things that are on the roadmap that I'm just super excited to test. But YouTube has been a big bet of ours. We've been spending on it, spending 5 figures a day, so it hasn't been insignificant. But I feel like we were at this plateau where I just didn't want to spend more. So we tested it, with you guys. We did a 3-cell test, so we did a holdout, so no spend. We did our normal business as usual spend, and then a 50% increase. Ran it over the course of 2 weeks. You guys helped set it up, do everything. We found that, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but our business as usual was it was still highly incremental, probably like a 5% lift, which was awesome. And then actually a pretty big lift, almost double that, or actually probably more than double that of our 50% increase. So that made me super excited. Summer's a low period for us in beauty, so we don't really have the budget to put into it right now. But I think for future, as we ramp up, Q3 and Q4, really excited about that. And then that also gives me confidence that, we haven't gotten to TV yet, whether it would be linear or CTV, but that's another channel that I really want to test. And now I feel confident that we have some of the measurement capabilities working with you guys, but also if a channel like YouTube is working, once we scale that up, I think that would be our next one. And then, everything, everyone talks about, Google brand search or PMAX now, how incremental is that? That's one I'd love to test. TikTok, we were spending equal parts TikTok and Meta at one point last year, and now it's really small. I kind of want to know, is that worth it for us to spend it all? Should we be spending more? So that would be another one. And then Meta, just different strategies. That's our primary spend, but want to see, any upper funnel campaigns, because right now everything we do is conversion optimized. That's probably our next test that we're going to run.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting things within this grouping. I think, something that we've encountered where, we're working with a large number of brands where, a platform like TikTok is a really good example where we've seen sometimes where companies are spending quite a bit of money on TikTok and it's not doing anything for them. They'll rethink their creative, they'll rethink their targeting, and they're able to make it work significantly more efficiently. So I think within a lot of these platforms, it's not just a question there's this binary question of does TikTok work, yes or no? It's always a lot more nuanced than that and more complicated than that. And the answer might be yes during certain periods of time, whether it's a seasonality question, it's a creative question, it's a targeting question. But I think the other point that you brought up is a really common use case for us is how do we measure inherently non-click-based advertising platforms, so CTV, linear TV, and these channels where a lot of it might be view-based. And I think often marketers have an intuitive understanding of, I think that this could be helpful, or I think this is a great place to spend my media. I just don't have the justification or kind of the data to support that.
Yeah, and then I think where it helped is we used, some of that incrementality to kind of create an incrementality factor and could kind of help us understand what our in-platform or multi-touch attribution targets needed to be. So we knew that, we don't need to have the same ROAS target on a lower funnel Google brand search than we do on a mid-funnel Meta or an upper funnel YouTube. And so I think that's the part that was really helpful, because I think a lot of times people will try to pour their money into bottom of funnel things because it looks like it's getting the best return, but you're not actually growing your funnel and your cake as you need to. So that's the part that was super helpful for us.
Yeah, this has been one of the speaking a little bit back to my experience in the world of ad targeting. If you think about the history of advertising, a lot of advertising was you show a TV ad and then someone does something or they don't, or you show there's a billboard or some out-of-home activity. Whereas these ad servers are now so sophisticated, they're really good at being the last touch point. So I know someone is about to do something, and then how do I kind of slide it in at the last minute to get the last click credit? But then you also have all of these platforms that most of us are probably using every day, whether it's YouTube or Google or Meta, TikTok, where they all kind of have these same generalized data signals to say, how do I be the last impression? And that's how you end up in this world where you have multiple channels taking credit for the same conversion activities. So it's really both from a measurement standpoint, but also from an ad targeting standpoint, I think this ecosystem is changing pretty dramatically.
Yeah, I think so. And then I think, we'll try to make daily optimizations, but also as we're growing and we're trying to plan out how do we get to the next stage, we're trying to figure out where do we need to invest in our team, our creative. And I think, so part of it is we're thinking is where do we need to find new channels to test in, and how are we going to measure them? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of always what we are thinking about, and Haus has really helped us, have some of the data to kind of inform our strategies going forward.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one where, from Q4 of last year, we had a lot of customers test holiday creatives versus business as usual creatives as multiple cells to say hey, should we be investing in this other kind of creative strategy? Generally as a basket, does that work? But then not only does that work, which channels does it work for? Which tactics does it work for? Because every channel could potentially behave a little bit differently. And if you need to create assets that work with all of the different platforms, how do you strategically spend your time and your company or resources time to make sure you're investing in things that really move the meter and are not necessarily just kind of duplicative or not helpful?
That's a really good one. Definitely something we're thinking about, even just additional channels. I'm also really excited on some of the kind of the smaller ones as we get along further and test individual channels, like the different strategies on the channels or something. Like for example, different optimization windows on Meta, that's one. Different campaign types, if it's Advantage Plus shopping versus regular. Some of those things I'm really excited just to continue to test and try to just etch out a little bit more efficiency each time. I'm super excited about doing those as well.
Yeah, I mean, another one that comes to mind that we were just talking about was we launched a case study recently on Performance Max and using brand exclusions or brand inclusions as multiple cells of a 3-cell experiment. Because I think a lot of people inherently say, hey, should I have these brand inclusions? Like, I don't really want to be there. I feel like I'm paying for something that I might already have. And in the case study that we launched, where I think every company can potentially be different here, which is why you need to test for yourself, but it creates a great opportunity where what we saw was actually having those brand inclusions drove a really positive incremental result. And I think for a large part of it is you're feeding more data to the system to be able to conversion optimize more efficiently. So it's not just saying, where did that person convert on this brand search ad or kind of, in whatever ad format, but it's much more of who are the types of people that are converting? How do we reach them? Like, what are the similarities? And then creating broader architectures so that, you're, as you're saying, like feeding the top of the funnel, you want to be giving these systems more data to optimize against.
Yeah, I think that's a great one and one that we're really excited to test as well. I think the other part that I love is there's almost no subjectivity to it. You're just saying, this is what happened. This is what happens when you don't spend the money. This is what happens when you spend it in this fashion. This is what happens when you do it in another fashion. And you can pick, your primary KPIs. So we're looking at primarily new customer revenue and new customer orders. And we're not going off of an in-platform number or a setting, because a lot of times I think marketers that don't have access to stuff will test it, and they might do 2 campaigns side by side with different things, and they might look at their attribution or something like that, and it's not necessarily reflecting the impact that it's having on their business. So I think actually looking at the metrics that the brands care about outside of just the media perspective is really helpful.
Yeah, I think this is one of the jokes we used to make when I was at Google was you needed a math PhD to understand Google Ads. You go in, there's a million knobs, and there's 1,000 different things that you can be doing, 1,000 different ways of potentially spending money. And it's, I kind of look at it through a system where there are a lot of great ways to make money with these platforms, but there's also a lot of ways to lose money, like sort of like Las Vegas maybe, as an example. But it's creating like the frameworks to say, hey, these are the things that are working. How do we kind of iterate and test into it? So as you think about kind of maybe like the back half of the year, it sounds like there's definitely some tests that are top of mind. But just like I guess your general take on the ecosystem, like who are the types of companies you think should be focusing on incrementality? Like what do you think is like the sweet spot? Because like obviously I have an opinion, but I'd be curious for your take.
I would say, anybody who's spending money on more than one platform, smaller businesses might be on one platform, might be primarily Meta, primarily TikTok. But I think as you get above that, and I would imagine most people in the room are well above that, I think it makes sense because then when you're looking at attribution, you might get double credit, people claiming double credit. And so I think if you're trying to figure out where to put your next dollars, I guess really it's 2 things when we think about it when we're setting up tests. Is either where are we going to put our next dollars? If we've got this X amount of spend, where are we going to get the best marginal outcome? Also trying to maximize the efficiency. Everyone's talked about this being the year of profit, and everyone's trying to be as efficient as possible. And most of us probably have some spend that's not as profitable as the rest of our spend. So trying to uncover and figure out what that is, this can really help us.
Yeah, it's the ability to move money between channels kind of in a seamless way, but in one that, there's a really tremendous opportunity not just to say what is driving lift or like what is incremental, but there's like a relative efficiency of it to say, hey, is this efficient from a cost basis? Or even what are the places that we want to be as a company where I think there's a lot of companies who are really sensitive to like where their ads are running and like just general principles as an organization of these are the things that we do and these are the things that we don't do. And I think the opportunity that can come through a house is you don't necessarily need to do Performance Max. You don't need to do app campaigns. You don't need to use Advantage Shopping Plus. It's like you can or you don't have to, but it's still how do you create the relative efficiency amongst the things that you're doing and then bring that into your marketing strategy. So I think there's certainly a lot there. And I think as we're running out of time to wrap up, what if you had to come down with one thing you're most excited to learn this year? Like what would be the insight through incrementality testing or even just like broader in your marketing strategy? Like what is the one thing where as we're talking in January or February of next year, you'd be like, I'm so glad we figured this out?
The biggest one would be kind of the former of what I said before, is where's the place where we're going to find our next growth from and our next scale from, and being able to test that and get some confidence and validate that before we put hundreds of thousands or millions into that would be so helpful for us.
Yeah, it's the funny thing is like I think about this a lot of, if you're spending hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars through your job, like investing money as a CMO, that's one thing. But if you were to spend your own money of like millions of dollars, you'd be terrified about it. And I think it's a way to create the accountability framework and measurement structure so that you can be more confident in those decisions, almost in the way that you would think about your own money. Which
Absolutely.
Is great. Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have for today, but really excited to be here and to share more.
Thanks, man. Awesome.